So the bottom line is this: don't prolong the agony. And whatever you do, please don't borrow against your 401k. I hate seeing that where people, they lose their cars, they lose their job, they lose their 401k. And it's like, what is going on? What is it that stopped you from helping yourself? And most of the time, the thing that holds up people the most is pride. Don't let pride get in the way. Don't let irrational feelings stop you from moving on to a better life and a better future.
Welcome to the Bankruptcy Podcast, a podcast about untangling the complex world of bankruptcy in Georgia. Each week, we deliver the best insights and practical advice on how to navigate the legal waters of bankruptcy with expert guidance and real-life stories. Now here's your host, Jeff Kelly.
Hello, this is Jeff Kelly, and in this video, I want to talk about, can you get fired from your job if you file a Chapter 13 or Chapter 7? I've been doing this since 1998, 25 years. I have never, ever had a client come to me after we filed and said, oh my gosh, Jeff, you're not going to believe this. I just got fired because I filed this case. Well, the reason that's never going to happen is because the bankruptcy code forbids it. If your employer says, oh my goodness, I am so sorry, buddy, but you just filed a Chapter 13 or you just filed Chapter 7, I don't like that, you're fired. They would expose themselves to a tremendous amount of liability. Now, having said that, Georgia is an at-will state. If an employer wants to get rid of you for any reason, almost any reason, they wake up one morning, oh, I have a headache, you're fired. They can pretty much do that. But they can't say, you filed bankruptcy, you're out. And there's a lot of reasons why I don't think any halfway reasonable employer would ever do that. For one thing, it's really hard to find good employees right now in this day and age. I don't know what has happened to our country, but it's really hard to find people that will actually show up to the job and work. Especially if you're good at what you do, they're not going to fire you. And then another thing is, a very high percentage of our country has filed at some point in their lives. They themselves have probably filed and you don't know it. And if they haven't filed, they probably have a family member or a close friend who has. And there's so many myths out there about Chapter 13 and Chapter 7. This is not just some magic button that you press and presto, all the debts are magically wiped out. No, you have to show your paycheck stubs. We have to list all your assets. We have to look at your income and your budget, and we have to make sure that you really are in a position where you cannot afford these debts and it is causing a tremendous hardship and you need a discharge to be able to move on with your future. It's a good system. Nobody's getting away with anything. Nobody's lying to the court. People who lie to the court, any court, end up in jail. You can't do that. It's a good system that is set up for people who have been through some tragedies. Probably one of the most common reasons people file is divorce situations. You've got two incomes, and then for whatever reason, somebody flies the coop and somebody else gets left with all the bills. And as an employer, a good employer isn't going to want you to just suffer and have this big dark cloud of debt hanging over you, keeping you awake at night, stressing you out every time you go to the mailbox or every time the phone rings. Employers aren't going to want that for their employees. For their own selfish reasons, they're going to want you to perform at your best, and you can't do that when you can't sleep at night, when you're constantly stressed, when you're depressed, when you feel down. They don't want that. Reasonable employers are going to want you to get a new start, a fresh start. And actually, ironically, a lot of people are really shocked to learn this. You can actually hurt your employer by not filing a Chapter 13 or Chapter 7 if you have a ton of debt hanging over your head. because eventually in the state of Georgia, your creditor will sue you and they will try to take 25% of your check. And that order that goes to your employer that instructs them to garnish your paycheck is very clear. It says that they have 45 days to start. And if they don't do it correctly, or if they do the wrong amount, your employer can become liable for all of the debt, 100%. And I have seen that happen before. And that is a really bad situation. Talk about causing a rift between an employer and an employee. Whew. But when the debt gets taken care of in a Chapter 13 or a Chapter 7, your employer is liable for nothing. Nothing. There are a lot of Chapter 13s, we do automatic deductions out of a person's paycheck. And if an employer goofs it up, there's a lot of leeway to fix it. I've only had one case in 25 years where we had an employer fraudulently take money out of somebody's paycheck and lie to the employee and never send it to the trustee. That was bad, highly unusual, almost never happens. But again, good employers want the best for their employees. A couple of years ago, on one of my podcasts, I interviewed my friend Martin, who's an attorney up in Virginia, and he has a lot of clients that work for the federal government, particularly the CIA. And I asked him point blank, I said, is this a problem for your clients working for the CIA and having to file bankruptcy? And he said, absolutely not. And think about it. Who would be a greater risk to the CIA? Somebody with a big, huge amount of debt that's hanging over their head and they can't pay the interest and they're stressed out and they're constantly under threat. Who's more vulnerable for blackmail or for any type of exploitation by the enemies of our country? I think it would be a person with a big, massive amount of debt that's hanging over their head and not being addressed. But what about the person who files a Chapter 13 or files a Chapter 7, who gets it under control? So there is no more dark cloud hanging. So there is no more stress. So there is no more constant stressful phone calls. No, all that stuff stops when you file a Chapter 13 or a Chapter 7. You get to take advantage of something called the automatic stay. And what that means is you are protected by the court. Nobody can sue you. Nobody can call you. Nobody can harass you. It's a good thing. And I would encourage you, if you're really super worried, like, oh my gosh, what's my boss going to do when they find out because it's public knowledge? Well, yeah, it is public knowledge when you file a Chapter 13, but they're going to have to do some work to get it. They're going to have to do some work to find out. But yeah, they can. But hey, listen, if it really bothers you, talk to your employer before you file. You will probably be very shocked when you find out that no, they in fact don't have any objection to you filing. My guess is they will probably want you to file for all the reasons that I have previously stated. So the bottom line is this: don't prolong the agony. And whatever you do, please don't borrow against your 401k. I hate seeing that where people, they lose their cars, they lose their job, they lose their 401k. And it's like, what is going on? What is it that stopped you from helping yourself? And most of the time, the thing that holds up people the most is pride. Don't let pride get in the way. Don't let irrational feelings stop you from moving on to a better life and a better future.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. If you're intrigued by the world of bankruptcy and want a comprehensive guide to help you get out of debt, head on over to kellycanhelp.com/welcome and subscribe to our email list to have a guide to bankruptcy in Georgia, helping people get out of debt delivered right to your inbox. Now back to the show.
So if you've got questions, I want to encourage you, take advantage of a free consultation. Give my office a call. Talk to one of our professionals. Let's take a look at your budget. Let's take a look at your paycheck. Let's take a look at assets. Let's take a look at the whole picture. And if Chapter 13 or Chapter 7 is not a good idea for you, I will tell you. I'll go into great detail of why it's not. I don't want to put you in a bad situation. I want my clients, when they file it should feel like a relief, like, this is getting taken care of. Thank God I'm not going to have to worry about this anymore. I want my clients to have good experiences. We get a lot of referrals from our clients. And if there's a bad case that it's not going to put you in a better place, I won't file your case. I won't do that to people. I'm not going to put you in a situation that's going to make you worse off. We don't do that. So if you haven't already done so, please go to my website, kellycanhelp.com. And if you go to kellycanhelp.com/welcome, you can get a free copy of my book that I wrote on Chapter 13 and Chapter 7. Or you can give us a call, 770-881-8449. Or you can also look us up on Facebook, and we have a link on there. You can schedule your appointment automatically just by clicking on that link. So I wish you the best of luck, and I thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Bankruptcy Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, kellybankruptcy.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you liked this show, you might want to check out our guide to bankruptcy in Georgia, helping people get out of debt. Available at kellycanhelp.com/welcome. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.